Hi, I'm Richard Murphy, and this is the sixth in the video series on the importance of tax transparency. In video 5 of this series, I discussed who the relevant parties of a tax system might be and outlined what each of the identified groups might want from the tax system. Given the importance of this issue, in this video we explore the issue in a bit more depth, focusing on how to engage with all the relevant parties with interest in a tax system, the way in which a tax authority can create public engagement with those parties, and the experience of the International Budget Partnership and GIFT on this issue. Irrespective of who they are, every single interested party wants information from a tax authority that, firstly, meets their needs, secondly, is in sufficient detail for their purposes, thirdly, that explains all the terms that are used about tax, so that the user is certain as to their meaning. Fourthly, highlights the actions of the tax authority that the interested party or taxpayer requires to be addressed. And then, fifthly, explains the consequences of those actions for the interested party. Before finally, and sixthly, setting out the next steps resulting from the information supplied. A couple of examples will help. As we noted in video 5, the Treasury of a jurisdiction wants to collect all appropriate sums of tax due to it, whilst having as close a guarantee as it can get that the tax system will balance its financial obligations as laid out in its budget. To meet that need, the Treasury does, as a result, require the following. Firstly, a budget that explains anticipated tax revenues and why they should be due, accounts for actual tax revenues received, and an explanation as to why anticipated revenues were not collected. And maybe that requires a tax gap analysis that provides more detail on this issue, and it might even need a spillover analysis, which in turn will lead to a detailed analysis of how to do better next time. Let's have another example. As noted in video 5, the taxpayers of a jurisdiction need to know what taxes they might owe, how they can work out what they owe with minimal risk of getting this wrong, and so, quite importantly, of incurring a penalty. How to actually declare their taxes, meaning they must know what the tax system is. How they can pay their taxes, and when they are due, plus how they appeal if the tax authority thinks they have declared their taxes incorrectly. How their taxes are utilised, because that encourages tax compliance, and from whom and where they can get further information and in exchange provide their opinions on how the tax system is working. Unless taxpayers have this information, confusion will be widespread, but delivering this information is not as easy as it sounds. For example, all the languages commonly in use in the jurisdiction have to be used. Information must be available in at least the most common ones. Taxpayer literacy has also to be considered, both generally and with regard to tax in particular. This is a big problem, most especially with new and unfamiliar taxes, but also with groups where literacy might be low, which is commonplace in all jurisdictions the whole world over. In addition, thought has to be given as to how taxpayers access information. Conventionally, this was presumed to be from a tax authority, but the issue is now much bigger than that. This issue might, therefore, include consideration of how to disseminate information using news media, social media, the internet, radio and television, including by advertising, public meetings, direct mail, text and advice centres. There is no one fixed answer, and multiple methods might well be needed to achieve any tax authority's goals. Deciding what really needs to be communicated is key. A focus on essentials might be important amongst all the options already noted. That essential data might include information on who is liable to pay tax, what might be required of them, how they can work out any tax that they owe, who do they report to, how do they pay, where can they get more information and provide input. Nothing requires more care than this if a jurisdiction is to collect the tax that is really owing to it. In that case, it's worth sharing some of the experiences of the International Budget Partnership when they have been working on these issues. Faria Mahouddin works with the IBP and has this to say based upon her extensive experience of working on this issue.
At the International Budget Partnership, we have been working with market women at the state level in partnership with the Society of Women in Taxation Nigeria and the Association of Nigerian Women Business Network to look at how these taxpayers understand their rights and obligations within the tax system and how it intersects with transparency and compliance. In our case study from Cross River State, we found that transparency on what taxes needed to be paid, in what amount, to whom, and for what drove better tax compliance and morale. The market women were often ignorant of their tax rights and obligations. This lack of awareness meant they were vulnerable to the exploitative and intimidating tactics deployed by the tax collectors, who are mostly illegal and agents of powerful state and non-state actors. These collectors demanded excessive payments and even shut down their businesses if these market women failed to comply. Given their lack of resources, market women often have difficulty accessing legal services to challenge unfair taxation practices. So what did we do? First, we trained the market women to help them understand their tax obligations. So what taxes? Including guidance on how to calculate their taxes, in what amount, and challenge unfair taxation practices, making sure that to whom is a rightful agent of the state. Second, we engaged the Cross River Internal Revenue Services to provide and publish council-approved levies and taxes applicable to market women. And indeed, our key recommendations from this study were for local and state governments to streamline and synchronize taxation and to provide a list of taxes, including what is owed and to which level of government. For the revenue authorities and local government to engage and collaborate with civic actors and business associations to sensitize taxpayers on where they can get more information and clarity on their taxes and how taxpayers can provide input on how taxes are impacting them.
Raquel Ferreira is the network manager of the Global Initiative for Fiscal Transparency. Again, based on her in-country work, mainly across Africa, but also elsewhere, she has these thoughts on this issue.
The impact of fiscal transparency is profound and evident, as demonstrated by experiences worldwide. Consider Brazil, where municipalities with participatory institutions saw higher tax collection rates, illustrating the link between transparency, citizen trust, and revenue generation. Similarly, the Philippines' decision to open the budget to public scrutiny under the Aquino administration led to restored faith in government, increased investments, and significant economic growth. Fiscal openness, however, isn't just about disclosing numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about ensuring that information is clear, accessible, and that there is meaningful engagement that drives real results. It's about bridging the gap between information providers and users, ensuring that information isn't just published, but understood and utilized for real change. Too often, we've seen countries tout high levels of transparency, yet the transformative potential of this information remains largely untapped. This disconnect arises when information is disseminated by governments without a clear understanding of the intended users, without grasping who they are, what they seek, or how the information can best meet their needs. This lack of engagement hampers the effective utilization of disclosed information, relegating it to mere data instead of a catalyst for improvements. Many countries within the GIFT network have sought to narrow the gap between information and action. They have forged close and dynamic partnerships with civil society to develop user-friendly interfaces, providing potential gateways to meaningful engagement and informed decision-making. By actively involving citizens in the fiscal decision-making process, we unlock the true potential of transparency to bring about tangible improvements in governance and service delivery. Well-designed public participation opportunities enable the public, including marginalized groups, to influence decisions that affect their lives. Working together, the different interested parties can harness the transformative power of fiscal openness to build more just, equitable, and prosperous societies for all.
In summary, communication is at the heart of making tax systems work. That's precisely why we are talking about tax transparency.